Welcome to the Revival Method podcast, where we teach you actionable steps that you can take to start moving, thinking, and feeling better. Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to the Revival Method podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Brandon Parker, and today's episode is just like all my other episodes. I'm just shooting from the hip, straight from the dome here, nothing really scripted, but working with my clients in the last week or so, I've been noticing this behavioral pattern. And if we're able to correct this behavioral pattern, I do believe half the people that try to get started and they crash and burn won't actually hit that roadblock anymore. So if you're somebody that's looking at their closet and there's plenty of clothes that you want to wear, but you just no longer fit in, you want to be able to be physically active with your family, your grandkids, your kids, or you just simply feel overwhelmed by all the information across social media and you just need something simple, this is the episode for you. But before we get into all that, I do have a couple things I need to mention. First and foremost, if you're a part of my newsletter and my community, there is a challenge coming up. That is right. Another 21-day challenge is going to be launching soon. So just be on the lookout. I'm going to have a sign-up sheet sent out at some point in time here. The last challenge that we had, the majority of people that stuck it through lost a significant amount of body fat, if that was their goal. I had people reach out saying that it's the best they have moved in a very long time. And of course, I did have some people talk about having a complete reduction in the pain that they were feeling in areas that they were unable to heal in the past. Now, of course, I can't guarantee this stuff for you because I don't know your particular situation, but it is a free 21-day challenge. If you are interested, hit the newsletter button below in the show notes or just join our community. It will be hosted in our community, but I'm trying to find ways that for people that are not on Facebook can actually join us as well. Still workshopping it all. And the other thing, as always, if you are somebody that has been listening to this podcast, you've been getting a tremendous amount of value, please take the 5 seconds that it would take to give us a 5-star review. If you're on Spotify, there's going to be 3 little dots at the top right corner. Hit that and it's going to say rate this show. If you're on Apple Podcasts, scroll to the bottom. There's going to be 5 stars at the bottom there. Hit it, and that will change my life dramatically. It may not seem like it helps a lot, but trust me, it does. By doing so, you're telling the algorithm, this is a great show, and people like me should be hearing this. That allows me to have a better impact on the entire world, which is my goal. So if you can help me do that, that would mean the world to me. But without further ado, let's actually talk about today's topic. So, what is this behavioral pattern that I keep seeing? Well, you have people that get into this circumstance where they are super frustrated with how they feel, the way they look, the way they move, and they really want to make a change. And us as human beings make this mistake that we are in a tremendous amount of discomfort. So that means we have to have this tremendous amount of effort to match that discomfort to try to fix it. But that's nothing further from the truth. And with this line of thought or line of thinking, it actually leads us to burnout, being overwhelmed, and then eventually saying, I can't do this, right? Because if you are going from not exercising, not being aware of your food, not knowing how to modify your exercise, and just going into what you think is right, which is 7 days a week of exercise, we're throwing cardio in there, we're going to cut out all our favorite foods, you are going to feel like, wow, I can't exercise because my knee hurts. I can't find the time to go to the gym 7 days per week. I think I'm doing the right things when it comes to food, but when I step onto the scale, I'm actually gaining weight. What is going on here? And then you tend to see a behavioral pattern where they start to blame it on things that are outside of their control. Where, hey, it must be my hormones, or I want to go to the gym, but it's always so packed. Well, you're not going to be able to control other people's actions. You're not going to be able to, I would say, control your hormones in the way that unless you're doing hormone replacement therapy, you're not going to be able to control the natural decline of hormones as you age, right? So why are you blaming your actions on stuff that's outside of your control? Well, It's human nature to do that because when we take the blame away from ourselves, we feel okay with giving up. And I don't think that's a good solution because you just find yourself in a deeper hole to dig yourself out of. But if you were to focus on the things that you can control, which is water intake, your stress management, your nutrition, your activity, your mindset, all these things tend to help everything, all your facets of life, and you start to move and feel like you actually want to do. But are you doing all these things at once? Not by a long shot. So instead of trying to get into this circumstance or in a situation where you have a massive amount of discomfort and you're coming up with a solution to match that amount of discomfort, let's do the bare minimum. Absolute bare minimum, because that's something that you're actually going to stick to for a long period of time. Before I get into a little bit more of that, let's talk about compounding interest, right? So it's the idea of given enough time and consistency, you'll start to see small little inputs gain to be bigger and bigger and bigger over time. If you're somebody that has been investing into the stock market and you've given it enough time, I'm sure you have seen the magic of compounding interest. But I do want to actually utilize a story that I read in the book Atomic Habits. To simplify, there was a British cycling team that was very bad at cycling, and they never really placed in a high position in all the races. It was so bad to the point where companies that had racing bike materials didn't want to sell their stuff to that team because they were afraid that it would get negative publicity. It's like, well, the cyclists might be losing because they're on bad bikes. So the companies didn't want to sell to them. So they brought in a new coach. This new coach was obsessed with the game plan of improving small little areas, so making small improvements in a bunch of different little areas, and it would come together to make a massive effect. The fancy word that they used, I think, was aggregation of marginal gains, but it just simply means make small improvements everywhere you can, and then you'll see it all come together as one big improvement. Yeah. So what did they do? Well, they looked everywhere. So they looked at special pillows, special mattresses that had a cooling effect. So they actually increased sleep quality and quantity. They painted the storage room where their bikes were white so they can find if there was any dust that would lead to the degradation of their biking equipment. They made sure that they were wiping down everything they could with special wipes to make sure that the cyclist wouldn't get sick. They were considering every little aspect of what it takes to be a good cyclist on the day of race day, that they were approving every little thing, right? In isolation, each one of these things really didn't make a big difference. But when you added them together, this team that couldn't even get a biking manufacturer to sell them their materials became champions for a long period of time. Like, they went down as one of the greatest cyclist dynasties in the years to come. I don't have the specific dates, but that just shows you another example that when you start making small improvements across the board and you give it time and consistency, they start to grow. So let's actually bring this back to more practicality when it comes to health and wellness. Okay. I have a client that is heavily invested in his business. He doesn't have a lot of working time. Well, I should say time outside of work is a better way to phrase it. And he was telling me that cooking for himself on a daily basis is very hard. And he didn't have time to walk. So what did we do? Well, we had check-ins at least twice per week on a phone call. So during that 15-minute phone call, I had him walk while we were on the phone. So those small little 15-minute windows twice a week is nothing. However, what happened when he started to walk? He started to realize that after the conversation, he had much more clarity, which led to more productivity in his work, which then he actually just thought to himself, I need to start walking more. So by just exposing him with a small dosage of walking, he started to feel the benefits. And now he's walking every day per week because obviously he knows it's good for his health, but in a more business savvy way, he knows that he's a better businessman when he walks. So that's one thing that we can do. Started off as a 30-minute commitment per week. Now is something that he's doing habitually, which is pretty awesome. The other thing that we had him do is, okay, you're eating out 7 days per week. Do you think it's fair that we only go out 5 days per week? So that means you're cooking 2 of those days. He said that's a beautiful start. So what did he do? Well, he started to have to figure out what foods he knew how to cook, which was a very small selection. So he had to start looking up recipes, start broadening his horizons and awareness of what he can make in a time efficient manner. So within those 2 days that he cooked, he learned multiple recipes. I think it was 4 in total, all that he can do in under 15 minutes. He would never have learned that unless we set up this small goal that was very obtainable for him to do. Now, with him doing only 2 days per week, we are inching towards cooking every day of the week because not only is it time efficient, but it's also cheaper to do and healthier because you can control the variables of how your food's being cooked. But this didn't start with him cooking every day of the week. He started with just simply a couple days per week. So these are things that you need to be looking at. These are the things that you need to be asking yourself. What are the smallest activities that I can do right now that perhaps can build over time? You're not jumping on a treadmill 7 days per week, waiting till you're drenched in sweat and getting off. Nobody wants to do that. And plus, it's not even that great for fat loss or overall health. But nevertheless, that's a different story. You're not dedicating yourself to 6 hours of training per week when you're not even doing 1 hour of training per week, right? You are looking at your current lifestyle, your current preferences and capabilities, and coming up with a very reasonable start. And if you were to get 1% better every day for the next 365 days, you're going to be 30 times better than what you are right now. Your health is 37 times better than what your current health is now. And then we can look at it the other way as well. Let's say you didn't get 1% better every day. You didn't try to make these small improvements. You try to do everything at once. You basically said, screw it, I can't make these changes. Now you're getting 1% worse every day. Do you see how that's a slippery slope? You see, 1% better each day is very obtainable. It just takes time for you to sit down and decide what activity you want to commit to. But it takes vulnerability, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It requires you to sit down and see where your weakest link is and seeing how we can improve it. Now, if I had to give somebody a simplistic starting point, I always suggest start with exercise. Nutrition's great. And if we are trying to leverage body fat loss, you're going to need to master nutritional principles. However, when you start to exercise, you start to see this domino effect in a good way. You start to exercise, you start to feel good. When you start to feel good, you start to pick better food choices. Your sleep starts to get better. Your stress management starts to get better. I've seen it time and time again with my clients. Start with some walking. Start with an exercise routine. I have plenty of them on YouTube for you to watch. And then as you start to feel like your bandwidth is capable of taking on another health improvement goal or task, then add it. But if you feel like you are at wit's end, you have multiple kids you're trying to raise multiple kids, job has deadlines, you don't feel the best because your knee's on fire, do not try to add more than what you can handle. You're just going to set yourself up for failure. You're going to ruin your confidence, and it's going to get to a point where you're going to feel like, what's the point? I don't want that for you. Okay. So I hope this perspective is refreshing. I hope it's valuable. And if you actually need help with a starting point, I actually offer this completely for free for everyone that's on my newsletter. In my newsletter, there's always a call to action at the bottom saying, how can I help you? And for the people that have reached out, we have game planned so much for them. And it's because I truly want to help you. But I can't help you unless you ask and actually get to know me, and I get to know you. So I don't just give you generic advice. I give you a pointed in the right direction, but it's tailored to what you have told me. So anyways, once again, hey, this is something that I really love to do. I love the podcast. I love to get my word and voice out into the world because the responses that you have all been giving me has meant the world to me. It really, really, really makes my day when I hear that I'm making a positive impact. And I feel like this is the way I can do that. So I'll see y'all next week. Peace.